Working Cows Podcast, episode 384. This episode is brought to you by the Patreon supporters.
Welcome to the podcast that gives producers a platform to discuss and share paradigm-challenging practices. Practices that have increased the effectiveness of their operation and the joy that their families have received from this lifestyle.
Howdy, everybody. This is Clay Conry, host of the Working Cows Podcast, recorded exclusively in the Understanding Ag Studios. And this episode is brought to you by the Patreon supporters. Shout out to the Patreon supporters. Recently looking through the list of those who are supporting the show, and so many of them have been with the show for multiple years, some of them up over 5 years of support of the show on Patreon. Very much appreciate that. We send out swag gifts on a quarterly basis to those who sign up for their first year. They get a swag gift every year or every quarter, and then I try to send out an annual one. We've done coats, we've done cribbage boards, we've done sets of exclusive coffee mugs that you can't get anywhere else, stuff like that. So really appreciate all those who have supported, and on top of all that, try to do at least 10 minutes of bonus content with every week. Sometimes it's a little bit less than that, but sometimes it's more than that too. So try to do at least 10 minutes of bonus content with every guest and get that kicked out on a regular basis as well. So very much appreciate all of the faithful support of the Patreon supporters over the years. Today, I'm going to share with you a talk I recently gave on Jared Sorenson's Regenerative Legacy Summit. And I chose just to go with the approach of talking about biblical stewardship. And so just kind of analyzing what does it mean to look at our responsibility as the scriptures define it to the world that we're living in. And so I'm not going to say much more about that. I want you to listen to it, and then we'll talk a little bit about it afterwards and invite you to give me some feedback. So without further ado, here is my talk on Jared Sorenson's Regenerative Legacy Summit on the topic of biblical stewardship.
How many of you in the chat have listened to the Working Cows podcast? Is that kind of like on your automatic podcast playlist when your phone connects to your Bluetooth in your pickup? I'm sure for many of us it is. We just get to hear Clay's voice and the great people that he interviews. We're honored to have Clay here with us. He's been a guest on one of our webinars before, and it's just truly an honor to have him here. He's interviewed so many people from the agriculture industry and regenerative agriculture. He just has a very balanced perspective, and we're honored that he's able to come and talk to us about. What are you going to talk to us about today, Clay?
Biblical stewardship.
All right. Yeah.
Biblical stewardship.
Biblical stewardship. We love it. We love it. Well, let's run with it.
All right. Sounds good. Well, yeah. Jared, the honor is all mine, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be a part of what you've got going on here. Looking forward to the opportunity. And I want to start out with a quote from Johannes Kepler. He said, "Science is the process of thinking God's thoughts after him." Science is the process of thinking God's thoughts after him. The vast majority of scientists before Darwin were Christians. Johannes Kepler, Louis Pasteur, Copernicus, Galileo, Newton, Mendel, all of them followers of Jesus, believers in the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. And they made their discoveries in science because of their Christian faith, not in spite of it. And so today what I want to do is look at a couple of competing narratives or differing narratives and just kind of compare them, contrast them, and then look at the difference what the story we believe we're a part of, what difference does that make? If I believe I'm a part of this story versus that story, what difference is it going to make in my management? What difference is it going to make in the way that I handle the resources entrusted to me and some of those things? So the first narrative number one, is his story, as in God's story. And The best place to start with a story is in the beginning, right? We start with, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And then just a few verses later, we have Genesis 1:26 through 28 that says, then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image, and in the image of God he created them, male and female he created them. Then God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. And again, that's Genesis 1:26 through 28. That came from the New King James Version, because I would stumble over the old King James, and as I've found out recently, pretty much any other translation at this point. So I'm in a rut of the New King James, but Genesis 1:26 says that we're created in God's image. And I think that there are three big things that means. That means that we were created on purpose. We weren't a cosmic accident that came about because of an explosion. We were created on purpose. God intended us to be created on purpose. He did it, and he set out to do it, and we were the result of what he intended to do from the beginning. The second thing is that we're created for a purpose. God created us for a purpose, created us to do something. I think that purpose is to worship God, to declare his value, his glory, his beauty, to lift up his name in all the earth. So he created us on purpose, he created us for a purpose, and he created us with dignity, value, and worth. He created us on purpose, he created us for a purpose, and he created us with dignity, value, and worth. Every human, from conception to natural death, has dignity, value, and worth. And those are the three things that I think being created in God's image means. As I understand it, there's more, I'm sure, that we could dive into, but we've got just a few minutes here today to consider some of these things. So what is our purpose? Our purpose, according to Genesis 1:28, is to fill the earth and subdue it. God created us with a purpose of filling the earth and subduing it. Now, what does that mean? Well, as I understand the narrative of the creation story, that God created everything in 6 days. The last thing he created as the pinnacle of his creation was man, created in his image, male and female. He says everything is good on the first. He says the light is good, the trees are good, the grass is good. He says the waters are good, everything is good. Then he creates man, and he says, this is not good. And we know this, right? Instinctively, we've all been to the single guy's apartment. You've seen the socks in the sink and the dishes in the dryer. As he's hiding things as people are coming over and to visit. We understand it's not good for man to be alone. That's the only thing God said in the creation narrative is not good. And so God created woman to complete man. And then he said, this is very good. And he gave them a mission. He gave them a mission to fill the earth and subdue it. Well, he had created the world, but then he created a garden. He planted a garden. And he created man outside the garden, then he placed him in the garden, brought the wife to him, presided over the first marriage ceremony. And he said, I want you to take this garden pattern and fill the earth with it, to go out and to steward creation. Now, obviously, this is too big of a job for just Adam and Eve, and it was going to take generations and generations to fill the earth with people and to spread out over the earth and do this. But basically, they were supposed to take that garden pattern from Eden and fill the earth with that abundance and fruitfulness and all of those things, right? Well, we look around today and we see maybe not everything is good, right? Everything isn't necessarily good. And so there's obviously more to this story, and we'll get into that towards the end. But that's the first narrative, is that we are created in God's image with a purpose, on purpose, for a purpose, with dignity, value, and worth, to fill the earth and subdue it. To fill the earth with, the knowledge of God, but also to take the pattern that was in the Garden of Eden and spread it out into the rest of the world. So then we come to the second narrative. The first narrative, his story, that is God's story. If I, to be cheesy, I could say it's history, but his history is his story. The second narrative is to trust the science. Narrative number 2 is trust the science. And this is that man is an invasive species. Basically, when we see that, when we look at the world and we see, well, everything has come about through random, undirected processes, then we will come to the conclusion that man is an invasive species and that man is not good for the creation and that we need to preserve areas from man's influence. Well, we've seen how that goes. It doesn't always go well. In fact, in a lot of places where we have preserved creation from man's influence, those places go backwards. They don't get better, right? I mean, this is one of the things that Alan Savory has told us in his experience, was when they killed the elephants in Africa, the speed of the desertification increased. So it wasn't about removing the animals. It wasn't about removing man's influence. It was about actually implementing the influence of man. It was about actually moving animals from one place to another. And I just recorded a fascinating episode with Tom Kravitz from Athabasca, Alberta, and we were talking about how the Native Americans were really, in large part, played a large role in influencing the patterns of the bison, and that when the smallpox pandemic broke out, spoiler alert, this is coming out in a few weeks, but when the smallpox pandemic broke out and the native populations declined, then the buffalo started to overgraze and their population started to decline as well. And so that's kind of some of the contrasting narrative that has been brought to bear on some of those things. And so if we don't need to remove man is not an invasive species. According to his story, according to the story of the scriptures, man was put here to fill the earth and subdue it. And I think that's what we're doing when we use regenerative principles to manage our livestock. I think we are obeying that command. We are using our minds to look at the world and see how God designed the world and match our management to his design. So we are not messing up creation. We are not an invasive species. We are here for a purpose. And I believe that man's influence can make land better than it can be apart from man's influence. Now, is that always the case? No. Does it still happen that we are causing desertification in the landscapes? Absolutely, 100% yes. I was talking to Alan Williams the other day from Understanding Ag, and he said that in the same week in Alabama, a place that gets 60 inches of rain per year, they had a dust storm and a flood in the same week. Well, it's a broken water cycle, right? And it's in large part tillage that's causing those issues. Leaving the soil bare, giving it ability to cap when rain comes and the water to run off, and then it's dry and the wind blows and it's a dust storm. So I mean, we've got this broken water cycle. So man's management isn't by default good. We've got to look at the world, examine the world, figure out how God created the world, and then work to make our management match those things. So when we match our management with God's design, the earth is an abundant, fruitful, self-healing, self-organizing, self-regulating system. When we match our management with God's design, the earth is an abundant, fruitful, self-healing, self-organizing, and self-regulating system. And we just look and say, when does the microbiology thrive? When does the grass plant live its best life? When does the water infiltrate best? Well, it's when we give appropriate recovery periods. It's when we shorten the graze period and give appropriate recovery and get as much animal impact in a concentrated area as possible. Right? We give all these things: the ranching for profit, grazing principles, the 3 rules of adaptive stewardship from understanding ag. Right? When we get all these things put together, I think it's just us in common grace figuring out how God designed the world to work best and matching our management to his design. And then we see that the earth is an abundant, fruitful, self-healing, self-organizing, and self-regulating system. The fact that rewilding these landscapes didn't work without management from mankind was one, as I said earlier, was one of the fundamental observations of Alan Savory. And he shows the pictures of the fence line comparisons between land that is preserved from animal impact, from man's influence, and land that is managed. And so what does this have to do with legacy, right? This is the Regenerative Legacy Summit. So what does this have to do with legacy? We should probably answer that question. Well, first of all, I think it gives us a better story. To think that we are created in God's image, on purpose, for a purpose, with dignity, value, and worth, and that purpose is to fill the earth and subdue it, is a great story, rather than man as an invasive species and his influence needs to be, taken away from certain areas of the world. Secondly, it brings satisfaction, right? We're doing what we were created to do. This, like, contrary to what you might have heard, the oldest occupation in the world is actually a farmer or a rancher or a gardener, whatever, an agriculturalist, right? That's what Adam and Eve were put here to do. And that's what they were created by God to do. And so we are created for that purpose. And we get satisfaction from knowing we're doing what we were created to do. The third one is meaning. It gives us meaning. Every task has meaning. It's not just a mundane task. Oh, here I am again, reeling up the polywire, right? No, this is me fulfilling the purpose with which God created me to do, to fill the earth and subdue it, to bring life, to foster life on this planet. And so it brings us meaning. This is the contrast, right? Oneism and twoism. Is it oneism, which is everything's in one box? We're no different than the plants or the animals or the trees. We're just slightly more evolved than the animals. Or is it twoism, that God is one thing and he created everything else? And he placed us here with a purpose to fill the earth and subdue it. Now, some invitations. How do we line up our lives with this story, with his story? The first one is to repent. We stop trying to take control of our own story. Stop thinking it's all depends upon us. It's all up to us. Just repent from that story. Change your mind. That's what it means, is to change your mind. Change your mind about the story you're living as a part of. To turn from your own self-direction, turn from your own life, and turn to Christ and submit to his lordship. And that's believing that the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ was the only sufficient payment for your sins. That's the point, right, of what I said earlier. Everything was good, right? When God said everything was good, everything was very good. But then we look around now and we see everything is not very good, right? Everything is not very good. And so we have to say, what happened? Well, man chose to go his own way. Man chose to eat of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And man chose to do his own thing. And so now we have to stop trying to do our own thing and believe in Christ. And then we become part of this story. So then we join the story, right? We participate in the story. We become participants in this story of what God is doing in the world, and we get to join him, and we get to see our work as just a participation in what he is doing and what he created us to do, right? And one thing that recently came to my mind is that this changes the story we believe we're a part of. And it changes the story, and it's the difference between gifts and door prizes, right? If you were to receive a door prize, if you showed up at an event, and just because you showed up at the event, they put your name in a hat and they drew your name out of a hat, and you got a Milwaukee grease gun, let's say. That's cool. That's fun. But what if somebody was paying attention and they were watching you work, and they were watching you take care of all of the equipment that you've got and make sure that it's in good working order, and using a grease gun for, a few minutes or whatever every day, diligently taking care of that. And they're like, you know what? I bet he would really appreciate a Milwaukee grease gun. And they went out and bought you one and gave it to you as a gift, right? That's the difference, I think, between these two narratives. We see one thing as it's just a door prize. Well, this is just the land that my family was on, and I'm lucky enough to be here, and I'm lucky enough to get to live a life that I really love and I enjoy, and do work that I really enjoy. Or we see it as a gift from God who loves us, and he says, this is for you, and not only is this for you, but here's purpose: fill the earth and subdue it. Fill the earth with the knowledge of the glory of God as the waters cover the sea, as it says, I think, in Hosea. It's a gift. It's not just a door prize. It's not just something that we got. We were lucky to get our name pulled out of the hat. No, it's God loves us, and he gave us this gift, and he's saying, now enjoy it. Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it. And so I wanted to leave some time for interaction and discussions, but return to this here at the end. Science is the process, as Johannes Kepler said, of thinking God's thoughts after him. As we go out and we look, one of the accusations against creation or Christianity sometimes is that, it's just the God of the gaps. We can't explain all of this. And so just because we can't explain it, that must mean that there's a God that created it all. Well, I think that when we were employing those arguments, those gaps were maybe smaller. Those gaps were not as big as they are now. Those gaps are getting really big, a lot bigger, and as we start to understand just in the soil, all of the billions of microbes. When I started this podcast, 7 years ago, almost now, 7 years in November, I think what I was hearing was, in a double handful of soil, there are as many living organisms as there are people on the earth. And now it's like in 2 teaspoons of soil, there are as many living organisms as there are people on the earth. And so we just keep on learning more and more and more about it. And as we learn more and more about it, we're discovering what God put in place at creation, as I understand it. And that's what I mean when I say science is the process of thinking God's thoughts after him. So feel free to reach out to me. Leave me a voicemail. Tell me what you think. I'd love to interact with you more about this. My email is there, howdy@workingcows.net will come right to me. If you want every episode I've put out in the last almost 7 years, ranchingpodcast.com is where you can find that. So thank you again for the opportunity, and I'll stand by for questions.
Awesome, Clay. Let's give Clay a big round of applause, virtual round of applause, air clap. Wonderful job. We appreciate him being part of this event. So Clay, one of the questions is, that definition of dominion and kind of what it means in God's terms to have dominion over the earth and fishes of the sea, the animals, and how is that synonymous with stewardship? Kind of what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think so. I think that we are. I think that when we see these rewilding projects, they don't go well. It doesn't get better when you remove man's influence. And I that's what I'm talking about, is that it's if we just remove man's influence completely, it's not going to get better. That's what I mean by subdue.
Yeah.
And so we want to use the minds that God gave us to look at the world and see how does it work best. And we've had some great thinkers who've helped us make those discoveries. And I this is the concept of common grace, that God gives people the ability to look and think and see, and they've made those discoveries and they've shared them with us, and many people have implemented them on their operations and seen the same results. And so I think that what I'm talking about when I say rewilding is totally removing man's influence, and I don't think that's gone well as far as I understand it.
Yeah, very good. I definitely concur with that. With all the individuals, amazing amount of people that you've been able to interview. I don't know, is there maybe a two-part question? And you can definitely have full permission to be biased here and take it for what it is. But is there one that you're just like, man, that's the one that I would recommend people go and listen to, and why? And then are there any commonalities between the speakers? They're like a common theme between the speakers. It's like, this thing must be important because I keep hearing it.
Yeah. I think humility is a big one. I get this question a lot about favorites, or and I think that I'm too close to it. I end up listening to every episode at least 3 times before it gets released, and then it's too hard to keep every one of the 380 whatever episodes straight, that I've got recorded to this point. And so there are definitely some highlights, but I think that it's hard for me to pick a favorite or one. But I think the humility, just being willing to learn from anybody. I think that goes to your point of forget, right? The fast learning. Forget. You got to be willing to forget what you know. You got to be willing to forget what you know and just be willing to learn from anyone. And I mean, I've said, I going back and listening to the early ones is kind of painful, but it is. I mean, Dallas Mountain on episode 2, the 4 pillars of a ranching operation, what Melinda just shared, was one of those that I think continues to be, basically that's every other episode is just a fleshing out of one of those 4 principles, one of those 4 pillars, right? Of land, animals, money, and people. And so, yeah, I think that's always going to be a highlight. And Dallas was the guy who inspired me to start. He's the one who said, somebody in this room should start a podcast. And so that one is always going to be a special one to me, I guess.
Yeah, appreciate that. That's great. Yeah, those of you who go ahead and start typing in the chat what your epiphanies are, what your takeaways are. Practice that principle of teaching to this community here. What you've gleaned from this. Somebody asked, what's your greatest aha moment, Clay?
Well, I think it's just been a series of aha moments, but just, I think, honestly, one of my biggest aha moments was when I asked Nicole Masters if she struggled with the imposter syndrome. The imposter syndrome is like, I don't have a right to be here. I don't have anything to say. Everybody here knows what I'm going to say, or is smarter than me on these subjects, which is every day of my life. And especially on an event like this, I feel that way for sure. But she said, yes, absolutely. Every day. I'm like, you're the world-renowned agroecologist and you struggle with the imposter syndrome, and I think that just goes to show that it's something that is common to man. And so we need to fight that, resist that and just realize we can learn from anybody. And sometimes if we just the way we've been seeing things is different enough that it will help somebody else, help somebody else learn differently too.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I don't know if that was on record or not with Nicole, but man, it's kind of what I needed to hear, because
it was in Patreon bonus content, which there's a preview of that in the freebie that I put together for this conference or the summit. I'm not sure if I've ever released it to the broader feed, but yeah. So
Margot just dropped that in the chat. Basically, if you go there, it should be pretty self-explanatory how to be able to pick up on the gifts and offers that each of the speakers, or some of the speakers, have to offer. Not everybody had that, but we welcome that and encourage you to go check that out. Yeah, definitely. Humility is great. And, we appreciate your humility, Clay, in coming here and being able to share from your heart the message that God's put upon your heart, and to be able to share that with this community. You've definitely added to this event. So thank you very much. Everybody send Clay some love in the chat. Let him know of our appreciation for him coming and joining us today. Take care, and God bless, Clay.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. I was humbled to be asked.
Absolutely. Yeah. Grateful that you were willing.
So what do you think? Don't mean to impugn Alan Savory's reputation by bringing up his name, but do you agree or disagree that this is what he found, that when we remove man's influence, when we take away man exerting dominion on the landscape, that things don't improve? Is that what he found? I mean, I know he wouldn't necessarily say it that way, but do you agree with my assessment of that fact, that he discovered something that's true because God said it's true, that man is here to exercise dominion? Now, I know that other people have probably used this verse, fill the earth and subdue it, in a way that gave them permission to do things that we wouldn't agree with, or I wouldn't agree with, or I wouldn't do on my own place. And so, there's the caveat there for sure. But I think that we are here to make the landscape better through our management. And without good management that reflects God's design, and I think we can see that by the way that fungal and bacterial communities thrive under good management. And God designed that system to work that way. And the more that we can line up our management with the way he designed it to work, the more self-replicating, self-healing, self-organizing it's going to be, and the better it will get. So agree or disagree? Let me know. Reach out to me, workingcows.net/contact, social media pages, whatever. Send me an email. Let me know what you think. Am I on the right track? Is this a fair assessment of where we're at and our responsibility? So, would love to hear what you think. Coming up next on the Working Cows podcast, we will be talking with Kent Solberg and Jeremy Sweeten from Understanding Ag, and we're going to talk to them about outwintering cattle. How do we manage the challenges? How do we maximize the opportunities? How do we do all of those things? And we will be doing that real soon on another episode of the Working Cows podcast. We'll see you then.
We invite you to visit workingcows.net to subscribe to the show via iTunes or Stitcher. You'll also find detailed show notes pages, resources from our guests, and the industry leaders who have influenced them. For more ideas on putting your cows to work for you in a more profitable way, tune in next week.